Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Ward from Regen Farmers Mutual, and we're having a conversation today with Chris Main. G'day Chris, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks, Ward.
Excellent. Now Chris, for those people who don't know you, I wondered whether you would share a bit of your background story.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Cootamundra, in southern New South Wales. I grew up here on a small family place in sort of the 80s and 90s when farming was all about getting big or getting out. Still remember people talking about leaving a farm to your kids was child abuse at that point. So I got out and went to Sydney and did a bit of stuff there, working there for a while. And yeah, I was actually working in the stock market for a few years. And because of my background, I was very interested in farming and agriculture. But yeah, I couldn't really see a way back into it. But I was interested in the investment side as well. And I was looking at the investments at the time, and none of them were very good. A lot of those managed investment schemes, and a lot of money was being lost. But then I read a book, and it also related to another thing I was learning about at the time, was about how bad eating meat was for the environment. Because I grew up in a small cattle property and loved cattle, and I was getting a bit upset hearing that eating a hamburger was worse than driving a Hummer. So yeah, I saw this book called Should Meat Be on the Menu by David Mason Jones. And yeah, it just was incredible. What he was talking about, how meat fit in for the environment, for one thing, was really good. Then also the type of farmers he was talking about and the type of farms that he was describing, it was incredible. There's people who are doing amazing things on their properties, working with the environment, not battling nature all the time. It was fantastic. So yeah, I ended up working for a group that was looking at investing alongside some of these farmers, and my role was going out and meeting a lot of the farmers and seeing what they were doing and talking to them about what they were doing and that sort of thing. And it was just incredible. Like, you go to these farms, these people were, excited about agriculture, excited about what they were doing. Their farms looked so healthy. They looked healthy. They looked happy. Animals were healthy. And one thing that really struck me too was just the positivity about their kids as well. A lot of the kids wanted to come back to the farm. And that was just, totally different to what I was used to. And I should say too, Wardy, that a lot of these people had been trained by your old man. He was very much, the driving force behind a lot of these people. And so, it just blew me away how great it was. And it made me realise that, you didn't have to, have a massive property or, go down that get big sort of route that had been talked about for years. And I just, was so inspired by seeing these people that I wanted to do it myself. So eventually we left Sydney and ended up back at Cootamundra, took over a small family place I grew up on took over that in 2016. And then we've got a bit of a larger place, took over some of that in 2018. And the rest has been leased out, and we get to take that over at the start of next year, which is very exciting.
Mate, that's great. So if it's all right, can I kind of get you to talk me through some of that background stuff? Because I didn't know this about you, but I guess it makes sense. Will and your cousin, who I know well, finance kind of game as well. So I didn't know you were a stockbroker or even one of the first people looking into this ag investment play before ag was trendy. So did you drive the creation of that fund, or was that fund underway and you joined it? So
there was a couple of us involved, and we actually met Sean, my partner, and myself, we met at a investment presentation for the AA company, because he was interested in the ag space from a sustainability point of view, and I was interested in it because, you know, lots of cows, and it was pretty cool. And then we were just talking about different sort of models, and this was about the time I'd been reading David's book, and that was the first time I'd come across, you know, Alan Savory and the whole holistic management thing, because it just wasn't part of my world before that. And Sean, the other guy, he wasn't from a farming background, so it was easy for him to see that it made a lot of sense what was being talked about. And then as we were going around the farms, like it really did make a lot of sense to him. You know, why isn't everyone doing this sort of thing? So we weren't successful in raising enough funds that we needed to get it fully off the ground. After a little while we folded it, but it was fantastic because I got to meet all these farmers, see these operations here and in the US, and it just, as I said, it just blew me away and made me understand that this was a great option to be in, and the way to go.
And it seems like you've learned some of those lessons for yourself, because your farm, by the sounds of it, you got back in 2016, middle of the drought. 2018 acquired another property, and now looks like you've got some more on the way.
So they're all family properties, and I should say 2016 was actually, it wasn't drought then, it was just before the drought. But we took over half of the larger property in 2018, just as the drought sort of started. And I remember David Marsh came out a couple of times, and I was talking to him about it, and he sort of made me realise that was the best time to get started on this bigger block, because it had been farmed like crop for years and was in a pretty bad sort of situation, and it was actually better for me to take that over in a really dry time, because when it's wet, everyone's a good farmer, everything's easy, and you've got to try a bit harder when things are not so good.
And what are you running on the farm? Do you mind me asking?
So just cattle. So I've got, at the moment, just cattle. So I've got a mainly breeding operation, and trying to develop a sort of a phenotype of cattle that suit the sort of rotational grazing that I'm doing. So Michael Gooden, for example, he's been a bit of an influence the way he runs his place. Graham Hand as well had a lot to do with getting my thinking clarified on that. We do a little bit of trading here and there, but we used to be all trading, but I don't know, the breeding side of things, where your animals are suited to the country, suited to your operation, just seems to make a bit more sense to me.
That, for those that don't know, maybe you could talk about Old Man Creek and what Michael does there, and a bit about what Graham does there, if you're interested.
And I probably wouldn't do justice to either of them, but Michael Gooden, he's got a place west of Wagga, and he's got an Angus stud there, and he has split his country up quite a fair bit and uses portable infrastructure. He's got this fantastic portable shade trailer and portable troughs and things like that. And so he moves cattle every day, and his focus is very much on developing sort of medium framed Angus cattle that can cope with the sort of the planned grazing system. So he's done a great job with that, and if you ever get the opportunity to go out to his place, he often has things on there like kit days and field days and things, and it's great to see, and he's a really interesting guy to talk to. Graham Hand's been really interesting too, talking about sort of more intensive grazing, which took me a while to get my head around. But he's done a great video on it, which talks about how low you should graze grass, and it's really, really interesting. Basically, yeah, and again, I won't do this justice, but he sort of teaches that you need to be moving animals very regularly, and do that sort of total grazing where they eat pretty much everything, but then have a long recovery period. And he's got some fantastic data that shows how well it works. And yeah, when I've done that sort of thing out here, you can see that it makes sense. It's fabulous.
Brilliant. So it's an interesting mix of skills, bringing that sort of urban analysis of what works on farms and then implementing it yourself. It might be a bit early in the interview, but have you got any wisdom that you've kind of gathered from doing all this?
Oh, no, look, yeah. The main sort of takeaways I get from all this sort of stuff is, just get out and see people and see what they're doing, and find people who you like what they're doing and it fits in with what you want to do. And then, yeah, try to do that basically. And also just really keep it simple. Graham's been a really big one on influencing me on this. It's such a complex system, farming. You've got complexities with weather, animals, soil type, temperatures, all these sort of things. The more you can simplify your operation, one mob of cattle, moving them, as often as you can. You reduce your rainfall risk, keep it low cost, so you're reducing, debt risk and finance risk and everything. And yeah, just that'd be the main things.
Well, we'll return here to the wisdom, because I'm sure there'll be more. I want to kind of go back to the background. So, you're talking about my late father, Bruce Ward, who did educate a lot of the, regenerative farmers back in the 90s and early and 2000s. But you've now subsequently become a holistic management educator, and you sit on the board.
I'm not an educator myself, no.
No, you're an EOV guy, though?
Well, yeah, I'm involved. I'm on the board of the Landmark Group, but yeah.
Well, maybe just tell us that pathway, if you don't mind. Like, how did you get into that? And yeah, what's your holistic management story been? I'd love to.
Okay, well, so yeah, after reading David's book, which talked a lot about holistic management, actually we moved to Armidale originally, and the first sort of course I did in this area was actually a low stress stock handling course with a guy called Chuck Keeley up at Walker. And I thought I was going to like a practical course that was going to show me what to do and how to do it, and I'd get those skills and I'd be right. And it just blew me away that it was so much about sorry, it's Chuck Keeley.
Chuck Keeley, yeah. I don't want to get that wrong. So Chuck, mate, and K-E-E-L-I?
K-E-A-L-Y, I think.
A-L-Y. Thanks, mate.
Yeah. But yeah, it was so much about you and your mindset, and understanding yourself and understanding animals, but the focus was so much on yourself, and I just wasn't expecting that, and that was fantastic. And then I went and did a KLR course, which again, so much more of that sort of stuff, and it blew me away. And then I did holistic management course with Brian Marshall. And I was actually lucky enough, because when I was living at Armidale, I actually met Brian for the first time at a KLR course, and I knew who he was, and he didn't know who I was, but I was yarning to him a bit, and eventually talked him into letting me come up and see what he was doing on his place. And then after a while, I was running some cattle on his place on agistment with him, and it was great, because I'd go out there and be sort of teaching me some of the practical stuff. So I really got a good, well, no, it was more adjustment cattle on his place with his cattle, rather than leasing. And it was great because just, we'd be riding on the bike and, moving cattle and talking about stuff, and, he'd be explaining things all the time. And he was really open and generous with his time, which was fantastic. And that's another thing I've got to say that I've noticed with people in this industry, because I feel this is different to the general agriculture industry, but people in the regenerative ag industry generally are just so open with their time and happy to talk to people and happy to show you things. And the number of people who have happy to have open days and happy to have people on their place, which is quite a confronting thing to do, I feel, and to allow that thing is fantastic.
You've just come back from Wilmot. Tell me a bit about that, and then we'll definitely rejoin some of those other bits. But the turnout there on a pretty miserable weather event. How was it?
Yeah, 300 odd people there, which was really good. And because I've been doing a bit of casual work with Maya grazing, helping on the support side, helping people use the system. It was fantastic. They had it last year as well, and there was a good turnout then, but I think more this year, and it just seems to be growing each year. But again, that really good feeling of community and positivity. And gosh, I remember going to a thing at Armidale years ago that MLA put on, and it was they had various speakers, and it was just so negative and all the challenges, and it just made you want to go to sleep. And then the guy from Fig Tree Farms at Inverell, Glenn Morris, I think it was, he spoke at it, and he again just blew me away with how positive he was and how fantastic it was. But great.
Now, this might seem like a loaded question, but do you think that you went and sought out people as mentors is typical of what you see? Or not just, you mentioned you went to this course in low stress stock handling and this course in KLR, frequent, trading of the animals and feed budgets and stuff. You went and actively explored. Is that something that you see a lot amongst your sort of cohort of farmers?
Yeah, I think so. I think, there's so much knowledge out there from other people, and I think because at the moment this stuff isn't standard and not passed down from father to kids or mother to like the family thing, people are wanting to get info from elsewhere. And I think if you're open enough to look at doing things a bit differently, because it still is a bit different, you're more open to going to other people and learning from them. And it's incredible the resources that are out there, really. Grazing for profit as well, I've done that, and that is just fantastic. KLR, I'm not sure where they're at the moment, but if you get the opportunity to do something like that, it's incredible. And I mean, it's not holistic management focused, but it's all related. And there's so many good holistic management educators out there. There's so many options to learn. And the thing too is that every time you do it, because I did, as I said, I did holistic management with Brian Marshall back in about 2014. And then as part of a management group here in Cootamundra, we got Brian Welberg in 2020, I think it was, to do holistic management. And he goes over a lot of the same stuff Brian Marshall did, but you get so much more out of it again. And recently I did a grazing clinic with RCS, and I'd done the grazing profit before, but again, you get so much more out of it hearing it again, different questions being asked, and fantastic. and you never stop learning, I reckon, with this stuff.
Yeah.
If you get to the point where you go to something, you think you know it, so you don't need to go to something because you know it all, then you probably should give it away.
I mean, it's incredible, all of those names of organizations which are so helpful. In my world, they've been the stat, because dad's world is very similar to the world you inhabit now. Yeah. How have you seen, though, the change as a director of holistic management in Australia and as a farmer going to all these courses and field days? Have you felt a momentum, a shift, or is that kind of wishful thinking, or is there some, momentum at the grassroots around this regen ag stuff?
There definitely is. And I reckon you can see that in two ways. Like, there's more people doing this stuff. But there's also, when you go to events now, and I really noticed this at that, the Farming Matters conference in Albury that you spoke at, when was that, 2020, I think? 2021?
Yeah, last year, I think.
Sorry. Just the number of people who are conventional farmers, or not even in agriculture, who went to that conference because they wanted to learn more about it, was really noticeable. I don't think it's just preaching to the choir anymore. I think there's a lot more people wanting to learn about it. Especially, I reckon, the last drought, I think that helped get a lot of people more interested in it, and I think the next drought is probably going to do the same. But yeah, I do think there's a lot more interest, a lot more people doing it, and it's becoming a lot more mainstream as well. Like, it's not unusual now to hear people, even businesses, and some of the claims are a bit sniffy, but a lot of the, like, Guinness, for example, now is talking about regenerative ag in their supply chain. Timberland's doing really good things with land to market. It is becoming mainstream a lot, which I think can only be a good thing, as long as it's
Well, we'll definitely jump into that, but I was going to say, I've seen similarly enthusiasm, around land buys and, buying out crapped out land and regenerating it. Have you thought in the last few years about whether you were too early with that initial funds and it might be worth revisiting that, or have you put that?
Yeah, look, I think we were a bit early. A lot of the people we were talking to, they were like, we're sort of teaching them about agriculture to start with, and then about regenerative ag. And I remember one conversation with a guy in America who was invested in a group that had a name that indicated they were doing good things, and once you got under the hood, it was a very different sort of thing. And but I mean, at the same time, though, I think your old man was beating the bushes probably earlier than us, and I think it was a combination with us of, probably not the right. I don't know if Sean and I were the right people to be doing it at the time, but also a bit early, because I mean, the proof was in the pudding with what your old man did. So
Oh, I mean, they've got bruises. I mean, their whole thesis kind of, was very good in that it was buy crapped out land, regenerate it, but they went 7 years, thank goodness for the carbon income, which wasn't on their original business plan.
Yeah, right.
They went 7 years before they turned the gross profit out of the cattle off properties. They're fine now, but not too many farmers on their own would be able to do that. Yeah. And you count, 5 years of drought, but 7 years was sort of unprecedented. And you don't want to be raising funds built on, faulty assumptions, right? As a first time fund. Yeah. And so I think that they're they're obviously sweet now, but you know, they were very stressful times. Poor Tony had to live through.
Yeah. But I think, you know, the landscape certainly has shifted, and there's a lot more investment in agriculture now, and that's a whole other issue, I feel, but it's not going away. And I think, you know, the more sort of groups there are that, you know, if people want to invest in agriculture, let's get them investing in good forms of agriculture. So, you know, there's opportunities there. And I think, you know, the whole issue with land prices and that sort of thing, I feel it is on like a negative on balance. But, you know, there are opportunities for young farmers coming through, or young people who want to be engaged in regenerative ag, and, you know, there's more and more out there to partner with some of these investment funds, and, you know, not necessarily own the land, because that's becoming harder and harder, but certainly manage the land with like-minded investors. I think it's a huge opportunity.
I think you're right. And it can be done at all sorts of scales. So you can see how, you know, communities in the East Coast escarpment might partner with younger people to do intensive agriculture and horticulture. And there's certainly an appetite for those young farmers connect and cultivate farms, and you see those sorts.
Because one of the things I was going to mention, but didn't, just on our place, is I'm running cattle at the moment, but my brother has actually come back to the farm. He was living in Canberra. He's come back to the farm, and he's going to be running a pastured egg operation.
You're right.
In the process of setting it up. And again, that's something he wants to do, and he'll do it well. But it's also opportunities for other people, because, I mean, his pastured eggs, that'll be a standalone business for him, but it doesn't compete with my cattle operation. It's very complementary. So, you know, you could see someone who's got a property running cattle on there, doing a deal with a young person to come in, and the youngie can run the chooks behind the cattle. That's their business. The owner of the land can sort of help them out, but it's the youngie's business. So you don't need to buy the land and that sort of thing, but, you know, you're still doing regenerative ag on, like, you know, the owner would have to be like-minded, but there's lots of opportunity for that, stacking those sort of enterprises that are complementary, I feel. I'd love to see more of that happen.
Yeah, you know, have you come across Phil Teal? Oh, I'm meant to be interviewing you, sorry, but, you know, have you come across Phil Teal? He's got a book coming out that goes into a few of the business models and the constraints and the opportunities around that young farming and helping them get in. He's East Coast escarpment, so I think when you go, you know, further west and into more brittle tending environments where stacking of enterprises becomes naturally harder, but the need to get younger people out there is even more acute, you know. So
absolutely.
Look, let's delve into the holistic management side, and I was under the impression that, and I might have got it bull by the udder, but Brian was telling me that he had you know, doing EOV assessments for people with him at some point.
Yeah, I've done. So I'm not an accredited assessor or verifier, but yeah, I've done some of that. Some of that monitoring, just helping out, because I'm on the board of the holistic management co-op that's running the land to market. So
and for those that don't know, maybe you could explain the land to market and EOV, and how, you know, farmers like yourselves benefit from that.
Yeah, sure. So so land to market was developed by the Savory Institute in the US, and the sort of thinking behind it was that farmers are doing really good stuff on their properties, but unless they're selling direct to consumers, they're often selling their products just in the commodity markets, even though they're producing a premium product that's doing good things for the land. So they developed Land to Market, and what it is, it's a regenerative ag verification program. So it's not an accreditation program where you say, I'm doing this and this and this, therefore I'm regenerative. It's a verification program. So we have people going out to farms and they do a baseline monitoring event sort of thing, where they go out and they do, you know, take soil samples for soil tests, infiltration tests, and then they do a lot of the holistic management based monitoring. So, you know, perennial grasses, grasses out of context, you know, all that sort of thing. And so they do that in year 0, and then year 1 they go back and they do short-term monitoring. So basically, you've got 1 long-term monitoring site, 10 short-term monitoring sites. Every 5 years they measure the long-term monitoring site, but then every year they measure the 10 short-term sites. And there's a fair bit of science behind this, that it works out an ecosystem health index, it's called. And basically, if your ecosystem health index is increasing each year, you get access to the EOV seal, so the Ecological Outcome Verification seal. And the idea with that is that you can then put that onto your products. And so people buying your products know that the health of the land is improving, that those products were produced on. But where the real sort of key that this is going towards is providing a supply chain for those formerly commodity-based products, and that's where Timberland comes in. So Timberland's a market partner for Land to Market, and they are sourcing leather from properties that have the EOV seal that are raising cattle. So there's a bit of a premium for those cattle because of the leather. We've had discussions with groups looking at wool supply, leather supply, and also meat supply, because we've got quite a lot of verified regenerative land here in Australia. And to my mind, it's a really exciting thing. And I think it's where organics was probably 20, 30 years ago. Like it's just getting started. There's people starting to understand about regenerative ag. And I think, you know, the idea of being able to go into Woolies one day and see some meat in the fridge with a QR code on it and the EOV seal on it. You scan the QR code, it shows you what the farm, where the farm is, who the farmer is, shows the ecological health index scores of that property, photos of the monitoring sites of those properties. So sort of, yeah, getting the consumer a lot more engaged with what's happening on the land, because as you know, there's such a disconnect between producers and consumers. And, you know, years ago, everyone, or most people in the city had cousins in the bush, but, you know, that's declined so much. And this is a way to sort of make people realise that, you know, the money that they spend has an impact further up the chain. If they're just buying the cheapest meat or the cheapest product, you know, might be cheap for them, but there's a cost being borne somewhere. Whereas with Land to Market, it's really showing that, you know, yes, we are buying from these farmers, and these farmers are doing like a independently verified that they're improving the ecological health of their landscapes. Yeah, I'm a bit biased, but I think it's a fabulous idea. So Tony Hill is the chairman who runs it here in Australia. He was developing a similar thing, I believe, and then he came across the Land to Market thing. So he made contact, and so yeah, he set up what's called the Australian Holistic Management Co-op. Anyone can join the co-op, and then members of the co-op, yeah, they get their properties monitored by trained monitors and verifiers. Brian Welberg's involved, so Brian Marshall and Ian Chapman, so quite a few people with a lot of good experience of holistic management. Rebecca Gorman's also involved. Not sure if you know Rebecca, but she gives great input into it all.
The two Brians, Rebecca, you mentioned somebody else, Paul.
No, Ian Chapman.
Ian Chapman. Sorry. Yeah, Paul's retired, hasn't he?
And then, Mark Gardner's been helping us out with a bit of stuff. And but, one thing though is that land to market and EAV, it's very agnostic in a sense in terms of what you do. Like, you don't have to be doing holistic management. You don't have to be a holistic management practitioner. You can be doing anything you want. But as long as those ecological health indices are improving, then you get the seal. So even though it's come from the Savory Institute, like, there's no requirement to have done holistic management or be doing it. We've got people who came to us, from RCS and stuff like that. We're sponsoring the RCS conference. We'll have a presence there. Sponsored the Maya grazing field day for the last couple of years. Like, we're very, it's about the land and it's about improving the land. It's not about who you train with or anything like that. Broad church, perfect way.
Sorry, borrowing from the politicians, but they're so good at making up those bulky words. Look, you're very close to straying into wisdom there, Chris, so we better go back. Look, I guess one of the things that comes to mind is with the value of holistic management and the value of things. I often use a hierarchy to say, well, the first value is on your own farm and improving the biological health. And then the second one is, market access or brand premiums. And then the third one is those environmental markets. And that those are pretty dysfunctional at the moment, but they're likely to grow. From what you've seen, where are farmers on that spectrum? Are they still trying to understand the values of regenerative agriculture to their own production? Or are they starting to go, oh, look, I actually am an RCS person. I'm probably improving everything in my ecological health. I'm going to use EOV to get a brand premium. Or are most farmers coming at this, because they've heard so much about carbon, and they're starting to knock on the door for that? So out of where the real value comes from, where are people putting their attention based on your experience?
Oh, yeah, look, I think that's a bit of a hard one. You're probably better placed to answer that with all the farmers you've spoken to with your Regen Mutual, but I think there's a bit of a range. Like, there's people who are working out the benefits to their own place. But I think, there is a growing sort of interest in those, the natural capital side of things and how people can take advantage of those markets. There's certainly more understanding from, the banking side of things, for example, about the importance of natural capital, and I think people are going to start getting benefits from that. I don't know, I just think there's more and more people seeing problems, environmental problems that are around at the moment, and the floods that we were talking about earlier, like, it's tragic what's been happening out there, and land management is part of the answer. It's not the only answer, but it's certainly part of the answer to flooding and drought, lots of fires and things. Like, you've talked to people like Martin Royds at Braidwood, and his property was so well hydrated during the fires that brigades were pumping water from his place to help fight the fires because he's just keeping so much on the land. And I think there's more understanding with farmers that it's not just about their property. There are these bigger benefits.
Yeah. Perfect, mate. I'm just going to jump into there. So I guess that there are benefits, but some of the best environmental impacts come from cooperation or collaboration. So, you know, islands of biodiversity versus corridors of biodiversity. Yeah. I think, you know, there are some great groups like that Family of 8 group out of, on the highway. God, what's the name of the town? Got a submarine as a bloody...
Holbrook.
Holbrook, thank you. Yeah, there's some great groups coming out of there. But what do you see the role of collaboration and the proclivity of farmers to collaborate to kind of get those sort of environmental outcomes? Are you seeing that at play?
Yeah, no, I reckon it's starting to happen. So my understanding of that 8 Families group is they're starting to look at working together for some of these markets, and you know, some of the carbon companies out there are talking to groups of farmers instead of individual farmers. I know Soils for Life are very keen to push that those farmers working together. One of the great things that there's been a bit of talk about this sort of stuff around here is landscape-based natural sequence farming sort of stuff. So like the Peter Andrews type thing, but doing it on catchment-based areas. You know, we've got the Muddamar Creek runs through Cootamundra and down to the Murrumbidgee, and we had a woman working with Landcare, Annie Jacobs, who was trying to get a more catchment-based approach going, which I think would be fantastic, because you're not an island on your farm. You're impacted by everyone else, and so if you get people upstream engaged, well, you know, it helps you. It helps people downstream, even people who don't want to be engaged. You know, they'll benefit. Just that creek. So driving between Cootamundra and Gundagai on the highway, you go past a fair bit of land that every time there's heavy rain, you just get these massive washes of mud and timber, and takes out fences, and needs a bit of that catchment based approach, I think.
I'm seeing a lot of that as well, actually. But how do you feel farmers go in terms of collaboration these days? Are they, you know, they're always good for a joke, like it's, you know, child abuse to leave your farm to your child, and, you know, but are they, aside from making jokes about this holistic stuff, you know, are you seeing them wanting to work together to make impacts? Yeah.
I'm starting to, I think, and it's mainly the farmers who are in this sort of thing already, I think.
Yeah.
You know, that's my understanding, is that, you know, people who can see the bigger benefits are happier to do it. Yeah,
sweet. All right. Well, mate, I think we've touched on everything that I'd hoped to touch on with you, but I'm going to invite you to, you know, explore any other topics that you feel are worth revisiting, if that's all right.
Yeah, look, not really. Just, I guess the one thing that we didn't really talk about was, you know, talking about broader benefits of this sort of stuff and the human health side of things. Is really interesting and something I haven't really got my head around yet. But just the connections between, you know, healthy soil, healthy food, healthy gut bacteria, healthy humans. Like, it's it's incredible. Yeah, those links, and I think the RCS conference in Brisbane in July is going to have some speakers focused on that sort of thing. And yeah, I think that's something that we're starting to learn, and a lot of health issues with people in the Western world, and a lot of it's diet related, and yeah, ties in, I reckon, a lot with the focus on cheap food and efficiency and all that sort of thing. Those chickens are coming home to roost, I reckon, in terms of human health. And I feel that with some of these holistic management type practices that are focused on the health of the ecology that the food is produced in, has great opportunity to help combat some of those problems. But
I think you've just nailed it. The industrial ag chickens are starting to come home to roost with our health. Like, I really think what we haven't paid the farmer, we're more than paying the medical system as a result. And you're right about the science of this starting to be really cleared up, and consumers are responding to that, I think.
Yeah.
So you mentioned I'm going back now. You mentioned, it'd be great to see a QR code in Woolies that showed the provenance of the, beef that you're about to buy off the shelf. Hasn't something similar to that already been established with Harris Farms? Yeah.
So both Provenir and Harris Farms are market partners to Land to Market.
Yeah.
They've both been very supportive of what we're doing, but they've also been doing fantastic stuff themselves. Like, we can't claim any credit for anything both those groups have done.
Who was the other one? Provenir, and who was the other one?
Harris Farms.
Harris Farms, yeah.
So you can buy Provenir meat from Harris Farms. And Provenir, I reckon, are fantastic. Their approach of going to the farms with the mobile abattoir, and the cattle just are in the yards that they've known all their lives, and they just go on the truck and no stress, and it's fantastic. And then tying that in with good land management, and they are really doing great work of closing that gap between consumers and producers. Like, I don't know if you see any of their stuff on social media, but a lot of it's about the farmer and where the animals come from and who the farmers are, and their production systems and that sort of thing. And that is just, I reckon it's fantastic. And then Harris Farm as well that you mentioned. They've got this, the only one I've been to recently is their store in Albury, which is just fantastic. And the focus on, fresh food and food that comes from a place, and, you know what you're eating, and it's not just the cheap snags and stuff. Like, there's all those different branded meats, it's brilliant. It's that focus on food and the quality of food. And, my understanding is that, the Harris family are very, very genuine about trying to, just lift that quality of food that's delivered to people, and lift that understanding of people, of where their food's coming from. And, they're pretty engaged with Charlie Arnott, like getting that regenerative ag message out. And I think they should very much be congratulated for that.
Well, I think they should be. People in our space, and just maybe because it's Australians, don't like tall poppies, but tell you what, there are people that we need to thank, like Costa Gorgatis, for sticking his little gnome-like head up and really pushing the barrow. And without those sort of leading educators, leading brands, leading activists, we need those people, and Harris Farms genuinely doing that. So yeah, and others, Provena, and yeah, I'm not trying to single out anybody else, but you know, the whole idea is that there are some people that are clued onto this and are using it as a commercial point of difference, but they're also genuinely excited about the ecological underpinnings. So
yeah, and it's one of those things that gives me a lot of hope. Like, you know, I think, you know, regenerative ag to me is one of the things that can really help fix some of the big problems that we're facing. And it's fantastic seeing the support for regenerative ag amongst farmers, and you know, seeing all these new farmers coming on board and getting interested, but then also seeing, you know, that there is greater awareness in the market and understanding of it and support for it. It's one of those things that really does make me think that we might be okay in
here. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. You got
to laugh. Time, yeah.
Good source of hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I just wanted to say thank you so much for spending your lunch break with us today at Regen Farmers Mutual, and for sharing a bit of your story and your wisdom. And I, for one, got a lot out of it. So thank you for your time.
No worries. Thanks, Woody. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the digital farm up and going. So I'm pretty sure I'm on the waiting list for that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Absolutely. It's like this time next month we will be rolling them out. I'm sort of shitting myself about how to scale it, but you know, we've got to do the first one to worry about doing the 100th one. You know?
No, I'm sure you'll know. Great.
All right, Chris, thanks for your time. We'll speak to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Woody.